All right, so debt to income is what we were talking about. There are a lot of banks that love the standard, what we call conventional thinking. And here it is. It's called the 2836 rule. The 2836 rule. Those are the first two numbers of my favorite girlfriend. That's her age and her IQ. 2836. Of course, she'd have to be to date me, right? 28 is called the front end number, and it deals with housing, meaning that's how much you can spend on your housing allotment. So let's go through a really easy example. Let's assume you make $5,000 a month, gross income. 28% of that, which is the front end number, can go to housing. If you do that math, I think that turns out to be $1,440. Right? So what that's telling you is, on a conventional theory thinking of a 2836 rule, you can spend $1,440 on your house payment. If you can find a house and you, finger quotes, pass that number, now you also have to pass what they call the back end number, which is the 36. So the 28 is called the front end. The 36 is called the back end. The back end number is all of your bills together. All right? Don't panic. Remember, we talked about real estate has different words that mean things to us differently than to the general public. Mortgage companies do as well. The word bill to a mortgage person means something completely different than to us. What we're talking about here are things that actually show up on your credit report. So a bill would be a car payment, a student loan, a credit card, things like that. Things that don't count: food, utilities, going to the casino money. That's not bills to them. That's where the other 64% of your money goes, right? So if all of their bills are less than 36%, you're good to go. But wait, there's more. That 36% includes housing, which you just calculated at 28%. So you would have to take that out, and you've got 8% for the rest of your bills. Hello, that's a technical question. Huh? I always wanted to do that as an attorney. When you practice law, I'll just go, How do you defend against that? The 36% includes all of your bills. And I told you what didn't count: utilities, food, casino. What does count: car payments, credit cards, housing payments count. So the housing payment that you just calculated as the front end is also part of that 36. So if you used all 28%, subtract it from your 36, that means the rest of your bills are 8%. So same example, remember, you made $5,000. You can only have $400 in other bills.
That's almost impossible.
Well, you know what side of the coin you live on. Yeah, $100 credit card minimum payment, $200 car, you're good. Well, so there are tricks to this, but this is what most people call a conventional lender's debt to income ratio is 2836. So what this allows for you guys to do now is to call your mortgage broker friend, and when they answer the phone and they go, hey, so-and-so mortgage broker, literally go, hey, what's your front end, back end number? They will hang up on you because they're so shocked that you actually know what they're talking about. They're going to have to call you back and go, I'm sorry, you caught me off guard. Yes, I want to know what your front end, back end number is. Oh, well, we've got a product that'll do 30/50. Yeah, and what's the front end, back end number? And they'll tell you, we've got a 30/50, 30 for housing, 50 for total bills. All right, we've got a 28/40. Oh, okay. So what that now allows you to do is start talking to your client before you even send them to a mortgage guy. Client comes into you and says, hey, I want to go out and look at houses. Well, before you go out and spend money on gas and waste the time, you go, okay, let me ask you a couple of questions. What do you make? My wife and I make 100 grand a year. Okay, so that means 28% of that. I can do the math. What house are you looking at? Well, there's this really cool little $170,000 house. Okay, you're within the realm. That's 28%. Do you owe anything else? Well, yeah, we drive 9 Ferraris and we got 2. So, okay, well, that blew you out of the water on the back end. All right? I can't help you. We need to talk about that very first thing we just talked about you being a renter, because you're never going to meet a standard. All right?
So you're going to possibly counsel them to see whether they're going to be FHA, USDA, right off the bat.
Even that, yes. You might ask them. FHA is a 55% back end. All right? Right now, FHA loans are really good, and there's a reason for this. And I hesitate because they could change all the time. With a 55% back end, that allows most conscious people the ability to carry 2 house payments. Is that beneficial? You know why that's beneficial? Because now that means on the offer for their second house, it's not contingent upon the sale of the first house. And that's how they win a lot of bids. So there's a lot of advantages. People say, well, why would you go to 55%? Well, there's one. It allows me to have 2 houses because I keep my other house. I don't have to sell it. Now, I will sell it, but I don't have to make it part of this deal. And I'm going to win because his client has a property sale contingency. So there are some advantages to higher back ends. Now, there is a company out there, and I think it's called Hallmark Home Mortgage. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. They have gone to just a back end number, right? Because what Tiffany said was exactly true. You may not spend all 28% on your house, but it still counts on the back end. All right? So what this lender has done now is they're like, okay, look, we don't really care what you spend on the front end. What we really care is the back end number. So we've only got one number, 40%. You want to spend 36 on your house? As long as you got 4% on bills, we'll do it. Or 15 and 15 or 25. We don't care how you allocate the bills. Your back end number can only be 40%. So some lenders are going to that method now. All right?
Is the front end and the back end, is it adjustable month to month?
Well,
Mortgage companies?
what do you mean month to month?
Well,
No.
next month, do they just, like your commission rate, you decide on?
Well, no, because theoretically the things that they are checking are not adjustable things. I mean, we all know we can lose jobs.
I mean, next year, or next month, can they go, oh, we're going to do a 40-30?
Not at once I've qualified, no. You mean the company? No, because there are definitions for this loan that the lender says we want this and this. Now, can they have multiple products? Sure. And that's what I'm saying. Therein lies an advantage if you think back to a mortgage broker, which we're going to touch on here. You could go to him and say, I got this guy, and he's like, okay, well, I know this company that'll do a 40 or a 30/50. Well, I got this guy. Okay, well, we'll take him over here that does a 28/36. Guess what the difference is between that? To the client. Banks have. There could be a bank that has, the highest I ever saw was a 33.55. 33 front end, 55 back end. You think you're getting the lowest interest rate? No, because they're taking a risk on you. So you got a mortgage broker and you take this guy in and you say, here's this guy. Good credit score, all that. Okay, I can take him to Fifth Third, and they got a 2836 policy, which he's going to fit into, and he gets 3.75% interest. Great. Okay, I've got this guy. I need to get him a loan. Maybe not as strong. Doesn't have the credit score, doesn't have the income. Same mortgage broker can go, oh, okay, well, I'll take him to PNC where there's a 3550, but he's going to pay 4.5%. Now, how bad do you want the house? Do you want to pay 4.5%, or do you want to be a renter for another year and pay down some of your debt, work on your credit score, and come back to me in a year and be the 2836 guy at 3.75? That's up to the client. So your mortgage guy can help you with this, and they could have multiple products. But that all is going to be dependent on how much interest they pay. Yes. Yeah, because the refinance could be a new loan. Remember, it's a purchase with a sale. So you would requalify for that finance because you're trying to get that better loan. Right, if you had a bunch of debt when you bought the first time and you got a crappy interest rate, one of the ways to refinance, that's exactly what the whole concept is. When people go, I refinanced my house and I saved $200. Well, it's because you got yourself a better interest rate, because you became a better risk, because you changed your debt to income ratio, or you raised your credit score, which probably is because you changed your debt to income ratio. And that's what I was saying with those people that got the FHA loan. It's 55%, so they don't have to sell their house. Now their debt to income is 55. What they do is sell that house in a couple months, and then after 6 months of the FHA, they refinance again, get a lower interest rate. So that's a common trick.
Would equity in the home factor in?
Could, because you need less money to borrow. So that's the 2836 rule. That's very common. Now, we touched on, and do we need to cover it again, the difference between a lender and a broker, mortgage broker. Remember, a mortgage broker, I like to think of it like this. You go to one mortgage broker who can go that way. He can have multiple outlets. The good thing is it's one point of contact. Lenders, you have to go each one individually. Lenders typically don't charge as much for the loan because they're making their money on the interest. Mortgage brokers have to charge a fee, just like we do, to get paid. So you're going to pay for that convenience. Once again, it's up to your client as to what they want to do. Do you want to go around searching all day to PNC, then to Fifth Third, then to Nat City, then to Bank One, and then so-and-so, or do you just want to go to one guy and get it over with? Let's go to one guy and get it over with. Okay? The third thing that they will check is the house. That's where the appraisal comes in. That's where the home inspection comes in. So when you go to borrow money, they're going to check three things. They're going to check the person, they're going to check the income, and they're going to check the house. What's your credit score? Show me your proof of income. Let's check your debt to income ratio. And then let's make sure the house is worth the money. All right? As an investor, there are many, many ways to make money. Investing in real estate, folks, is a no-brainer. All right? Now, let me classify that or clarify that there are people out there that call themselves real estate investors, and they buy this home and they fix it up and then they resell it. That's not an investor. They call themselves flippers, rehabbers. That's fine. It's a good job, good paying job. You might like it, but once you blow through the money, what do you got to do again? You got to do it again. Just like flipping hamburgers. An investor is someone that buys something and holds it for the long term. The only way to get truly wealthy in your life, period, is you have to hold an asset. That asset can be paintings, can be real estate, can be comic books, could be cash. But that's the only way to gain wealth, is to hold an asset. But what better asset than one that pays you monthly and it gets bigger in value every year? Think about what real estate is. Listen to this. I'm going to buy an asset. I'm going to borrow someone else's money to do it. I'm going to have a third person live in it and pay that person back. And anything extra I get to keep, and I get credit for every house payment that's ever made. I mean, that's genius. That's got to be a scam if you think about it. I'm going to borrow the bank's money, put a tenant in there. The tenant's going to pay the bank back the money, and anything over I get is cash flow. And when the bank pays the money, I get the credit for that and the appreciation in the real estate. And if you don't think that's true, think about this. Trump is nothing but a landlord. I mean, now he's president, but that's all Trump was a glorified landlord. Just did it in really high-end properties. 80% of all millionaires made money through real estate. So holding an asset, being an investor, you gain money through appreciation, you gain money through tax benefits, you gain money through cash flow when people pay you the rent. There are a lot of different ways to pay properties. There are also some tax benefits. The biggest one is you get some deductions for your tax benefits. Like, for instance, there on the bottom of page 236, 238, sorry, can't see, don't have my glasses on. Vanity prohibits me from wearing glasses while I teach. I've never let a little thing like seeing get in the way. Yeah. I saw a guy that had glasses on. There was no glasses in them. They were just frames. Yeah. Interest, the mortgage interest that you pay is deductible on your first and second home, not your third home. Now, that's third concurrent home, not consecutive. Concurrent means I own one in Indy, one in Florida, and one in New York at the same time. If I've got 3 homes, I probably don't need the tax break. All right? There are some other tax benefits. Now, when you have a house and you sell it, you will make a profit, hopefully, on the sale of the property. Now, when you buy a property for let's say 30 grand, and then you sell it for 100 grand, I profited 70,000. Very simplistic, don't ask questions kind of stuff, formula. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things in there, but let's just make that very easy. Called capital gains, 70,000. The way the tax structure is structured now, if I am single, the first $250,000 of profit is tax-free. If I am single. So I earned 70 grand of profit. How much taxes am I paying on that? None. Because the first 250 is free, I only made 70. If I'm married, it's the first 500,000 that is free. Only time in your life your spouse is going to be worth $250,000 to you. At least alive. All right? So it's $500 if you're married. So let me give you another example. I bought it for $30 in Broad Ripple. I sold it for $400. So I made $370,000 in profit. $370,000. If I was single, the first $250 are free. I would pay taxes on $120,000. Everybody see that? It's called the floor. The floor is $250,000. If I were married on that house, how much would I pay? Nothing, because I have a $500,000 limit and I only earned $370,000. I would pay no taxes on that property, on that profit. What are you giving me that look for? Well, I'm not done yet, but go ahead. Ask the question.
So if you sell the house more than, is that a $250,000 the government credit on you? Or?
Well, it's not a credit. It's just that you would still report on your taxes that I made income of 70 grand, but I would pay no taxes on it because the first 250 of income is free. So it's not a tax credit. It's just I don't pay income because this would be seen as income. I made 100 grand on my job and I made 70 by selling my house. I would pay my federal income tax on my job, but I would pay no income tax on the profit from the sale of my house because I made less than $250,000. In the second example where I made it 370, I get 250 free. So I would have to pay taxes only on the part that's over the 250. So I would pay taxes on the other $120,000. All right?
So if you're a married couple, you have 3 houses that total $450,000, you're still going to be paying taxes on that third house.
Mortgage interest is a deduction. This is on the sale of a house. All right? We're not done yet because there's another shoe to drop I haven't even hit you with. Because this is only good for owner-occupied properties, not investment properties. So how does the IRS determine the difference between owner-occupied and investment? How do you know that? Somebody said utilities, renters, primary residence. No. Well, that's typically. You have to live in this property 24 out of 60 months. 2 out of 5 years. You have to physically live in this property 2 out of 5 years. That's what the IRS says constitutes as an owner-occupied property. So the example I gave you, where I bought the house in Broad Ripple for 30 grand. I lived in it for 10 years. I sold it for 370. I would be eligible to use this because I've certainly lived in it the last 2 out of 5 years, right? Because I've been there 30 years. If I bought this property in Broad Ripple and had been renting it out for the last 30 years, I do not get this exemption because I didn't live in it 2 out of 5 years. It now becomes an investment property, and I end up talking about the 1031 tax-deferred exchange, which we're going to deal with in one of the later chapters. Because it's not mine, I didn't live in it, even though I owned it, didn't live in it, I got to pay taxes on every dollar. The exemption comes from living in it.
What if you lived in it at some point in time?
As long as it's 2 out of the last 5. And those 2,
In the last 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Say the last, though.
The last 5. I couldn't have lived in it 1969 through 1974 and then sold it now and go, that was 2 out of 5. No, the last 5.
Okay.
2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. All of those are the only ones that count. All right? So, and they don't have to be consecutive. So I can live in it for 1 year, rent it out for 3 years, move back in it and live in it for the 5th year. That's 2 out of 5. All right? I can't do like live in it for 1 year, rent it for 5 years, move back into it and go, that's not 2 out of 5 because that's 2 out of 7 and that's not the rule. It's 2 out of 5 years.
Yeah, I'm thinking about renting out my Roderick home instead of selling it.
Well, you can rent it out. I wouldn't rent it any longer than 3 years if you want to take advantage of this. I mean, it may not be. I mean, I don't know how much your profit's going to be. It may be well worth taking it as an investment and just paying on the capital gains.
It's on that red line.
Yeah. The mythical red line. So 2 out of 5 years. That's the key. There's the credit score. We talked about the pay, your debt to income ratio. One of the things I want to follow up with is they're going to ask for proof, pay stubs, bank stubs, tax records, things like that. There's the 2836 rule. When they do the properties, I guess I had all this in the notes and didn't even talk about it. It wasn't on the screen. When they talk about properties, and I said they do the inspection and the appraisal, the least risky property, guess which kind it is? Single-family home. Owner-occupied single-family home is the least risky. That's the one they assume the person would let go last. Investment property is more risky than owner-occupied. Commercial's even more risky. As that risk increases, the interest rate to borrow the money increases, and so do all of the requirements. For example, a couple years ago, you guys could have bought an owner-occupied house for no money down. Good credit, have a signature. Never in my 20-year career have I ever seen a commercial loan that's 100% financed. They want something. They want you to have skin in the game because it's the riskiest property there is. All right? Are we good? Way long audio file.